my name is Marcus Stewart, and I am a senior associate editor at Game Informer magazine.
Anybody that knows, I guess, gaming media would probably know Game Informer because, I mean, Game Informer's been out for a long time. I used to get my little subscription every month, getting my magazines and whatnot for a long time. So just to kind of, I guess, work our way up, like, how did you even get started, I guess, within the gaming industry to start and then, made your way to Game Informer? How'd you even make that transition?
Yeah, I guess it started, I guess first and foremost, growing up with video games my whole life. And around the time of pretty much I think the year 2000 was when I first got a Game Informer subscription. And
Mm-hmm.
I'd been subscribed to the magazine consistently ever since. And at the time, I'm in middle school, going to high school at this point in the
Yeah.
2000s. And you're kind of like figuring out, like, I don't know what I want to do. And I was always someone that was very much sort of like passion driven of like, I would like to work somewhere that kind of like reflects my interest. And at the time, this wasn't something I grew up thinking or wanting to do. It was just something I read and thought was like a cool gig. By the time I graduated high school, I knew I wanted to work in video games just because it's like, oh, that's like one of my passions. And at that time, I thought, well, maybe I'll get into game development, I guess, because that just makes sense. So I went to college for game design and did 4 years, but around my sophomore year was really where I really started to look at games media more and more as something I'd be interested in. And it coincided with Game Informer. This was around the time that GI had relaunched their websites and started doing more YouTube and podcast stuff. Their web show Replay had started, and I was following it like closer than ever because at that point I'm old enough to like appreciate more the industry side and the creatives, and I'm reading everything. And it just more and more started to penetrate my subconscious of just like, oh, this seems like a cool gig.
Yeah.
And I always loved writing. Like I always excelled at creative writing, and English was always one of my favorite subjects in school. So it was like, I'm always, when I look back, amazed that it took as long as it did to like, you could just combine those two things into one. But back then, the path into the industry was so much vaguer, or more vague, I should say. And as well, because it's like, ultimately, it wasn't that long ago. We're talking around like 2010, 2011 when I started, when I dipped my toe into wanting to try to write. I used to write frequent a forum for wrestling. I'm a big wrestling fan. And, they had sub forums for other hobbies, and they had a video game one, and people would write little reviews in there for stuff that was coming out. And I more and more was like, man, maybe I should try, like, just write something. But, you're like terrified at first because you're like, oh, I don't want to write something and everyone tear it to shreds. Because that'd be the worst thing that ever happened to you. And I remember the first review I ever wrote was for Marvel vs. Capcom 3, which had just come out at the time, and posted it in there. And at this point, I'd realized just from years of like, years of osmosis of just reading Game Informer and reading other review outlets, I kind of realized like, oh, I think I know how to talk about games critically without ever having, I guess, being formally trained or something like that. And I wrote it, and it got like pretty good reception from just the other people in the forums. So it kind of like boosted my confidence, like, oh, maybe I could do this. And then from there, it just sort of like took off where I started writing more and more. And as my time in college progressed, I realized like I enjoyed aspects of game design, but I was like, do I really want to do this as my job? And then the more I wrote, I was like, I think I'm good at this. I'm enjoying this, and I would like, maybe this is like the path. Like it got to the point where I was skipping classes to go hide in the school library to write a game review. And at this time, I'd actually started working at GameStop. And one of the perks about working at GameStop was they let you check out games as an employee to take home, because they wanted you to be like knowledgeable to sell them.
The Blockbuster days.
Yeah, I've heard that Blockbuster employees got to do that too. So I guess it's the same system. So I took advantage of that by just checking out games to write reviews about them, and also to expose myself to stuff that I hadn't touched. Like the best thing about getting things for free is that it's like, I'm going to try some really weird stuff, or stuff that I knew was like like bad games, like really bad games, but I just kind of want to play them. Because in my mind, when I decided like, I think I want to try to work at Game Informer, I had this like idea of like, what if they ask me about like video games? I need to know everything about everything. Like they might ask me how the ending of Bullet Witch was, this horrible 360 game that nobody talks about, and I gotta beat Bullet Witch. So yeah, and then by the time I actually never graduated. By the time I got to my senior year, I'd gotten to like the finish line, but at that point I was so like, I think I just want to pursue this. So then I just kind of left and started a blog, and then just wrote from there. It was And also by this point, what helped me guide was again going back to GI, the Game Informer Show podcast. I had an episode where Dan Amrick, he is ex Games Media going back to like the 90s. So he's like
Yeah.
in the old guard. And he wrote a book about how to become a games reviewer or to do games writing professionally.
Huh.
And it's like, this is what I need. 'Cause no one had done anything like that. Like, how do I get from here to there? Like,
Yeah,
what is
because
the
that was
path
gonna be my next
exactly?
question. Like, how do you even like? Yeah, you like creative writing and stuff, and I mean, I guess creative writing is creative writing. That doesn't necessarily, uh, I guess, change that much. You know, I guess you're just changing sort of the content and all of that stuff. But yeah, as far as like going to Game Informer and saying, "Hey, I'm gonna write game reviews. I'm gonna do this, that, and the third." Like, I didn't really know of a way to just say, "Hey, there's a pathway to go do that. Let's go do that." You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like you had to sort of piece it together. You had to figure it out. So how did you even get to that point?
Yeah, that book helped because it was literally a, hey, I have done this professionally for years. If you want to get into this, here are just guidelines of and just personal advice of not only just obviously you need to become a great writer first and foremost. In fact, that book had one of the best pieces of advice that I passed on to other writers that, you know, or aspiring writers where I've said, don't get into this as a gamer first who thinks writing might be a cool job. Like, you need to be a great writer first and foremost who happens to love video games.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter how passionate you are about games if you can't string a sentence together. Like, if you don't understand basic grammar, if you haven't found like your voice, or if do you actually enjoy writing? Because fun fact about this job, I know there's the illusion that so much of our job is just sitting around playing video games all day and getting paid for it. And that can be true, but most of the time we are just writing. Like,
Yeah.
we're either writing news stories or we're working on a feature, a preview, whatever it is, or it's just a lot of contacting and reaching out to PR developers, publishers to try to set things up.
Yeah.
So yeah, like there are plenty of days at GI where I'm not playing a game. You
Yeah.
know, I talk about games a lot, but it's just
Yeah.
like, unless I have something to review or play something for a preview, I'm just like, nah, I got these features to write, or I gotta do some stuff on the website, updates the release calendar, who knows. But his book got into like the less talked about and maybe the less glamorous parts about the industry of like the realities of the job. Here's how you reach out to PR companies. Here's what it means to like get yourself on a press list, to get, you know, press releases, how to request review code, what that relationship is of like maintaining good relationships with companies of like, hey, if they give you a code, make sure you do what you say you're going to do with it. Don't break embargoes, how to interview people, like so much of that stuff where you're just like, oh, I wouldn't know anything about this unless you had someone that's done it, talking about it. So the book is called Critical Path. It
Okay.
was published in 2012. I still recommend people that are interested in doing this job to read it. There's some stuff that's a little out of date now in terms of just like, because, you know, things have evolved since then.
Right.
But I
Right.
think there's a lot of lessons that are still universal no matter what about just the realities of the day-to-day job that I think people should go out of their way to read.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, in the early 2010s, like the freelance and sort of like there were more places to write for back then. Unfortunately, a lot of places have been shut down. You mentioned earlier, sort of like the state of the industry now with layoffs and how much the industry feels like it's contracted since then. But at least back then, I always think like it feels like it was still like a great time to get into it in terms of like the number of places you can try to gain experience and write for. And the first place I ever wrote for was like a free site, which is like, I think a lot of people that have gotten into it, especially if you got in around my age, that's probably where you start, is someone saying, hey, I started up a site. I can't pay you money, but you know, the dreaded, I can pay you an experience, quote unquote, which I don't know if you've ever had, you know, those jobs where, like I said, you're not working for anything and you have to treat it like
you working on the trust system pretty much.
Yeah, and you know, you always want to be cautious about that. And I've had peers that are very adamant about never working for free. And I understand that and I agree with that to an extent. I have a weird relationship with that rule just because that's how I started. And thankfully, the first site that I ever wrote for, the owner of the site was very much on the up and up, where, you know, he's like, I can't pay you, but I can teach you things. It's a site based out of the UK. I believe it was called Gamer Attitude. It's not around anymore. But that was the first time I got to learn the more business side of it, of like he taught me this is how you reach out to PR companies. After reading that book, he was the first time I got to put it in practice.
Mm-hmm.
He got me review code. The first podcast I ever did was with that site. So it was like I was okay with not getting paid, one because I had a day job, so that helped.
Yeah.
But also it was like I'm getting to do these things now that I was just reading about. So it's like, oh, this is valuable experience. And at this time, I don't know if you were familiar, but Game Informer had an internship program.
Oh, didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, they started it in the early 2010s. Like there's some former interns that I'm friends with now. But I remember when they started that, it was kind of like quarterly or something. Like it was kind of like different semesters. Like there was like a spring session, a summer session, a fall session. They usually had 2 or 3 interns that would come. They would work in the office, in the old GI office in Minneapolis, which is where GI is based. And you would get to do everything there, but alongside the editors, and just get like, here's, the experience that you can gain. And I remember wanting to apply for that, and I applied for it once. And this is before I started working at the free site. And funny enough, my now boss, Matt Miller, who was in charge of the internship program then, said no. But, just based on my current, like at that point, I only had my blog stuff.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, thanks, but, we're going to go with other people. And I kind of took that as like, all right, challenge accepted. And then after that, I started writing for the free site. And about a year later, my portfolio from that, I submitted that to try again, and I got it. So in the fall of 2015, I was a Game Informer intern alongside 2 other gentlemen. So I moved up to Minneapolis, unpaid internship, by the way, which again, I was fine with personally, because I was like, I think I had saved up enough money for my day job to like, I can live for 3 months and not have to get a job while I'm up there. But yeah, he moved up there and worked in the office 5 days a week, got to meet all these writers that I'd read for years. It was like a little bit of like a starstruck moment of like, oh man, that's Andy McNamara and that's Andrew Reiner. They've been here forever. I feel like I already know you, but I'm not going to say that because that's weird. And yeah, that was my first like real like, okay, I'm around people that in my mind are like superstars and still are. And I get to like rub shoulders with them and like just get a bunch of invaluable experience of like, what is it day to day to work and do this at the highest level. And I loved it.
What games were you playing? Obviously, you said you were a gamer growing up and stuff. What was your cup of tea as far as games and, the genres and stuff you were dabbling in?
When I grew up with an NES, Nintendo kid, and it's the most boring, like, video game origin story, because so many people have the same thing, but, like, Super Mario Brothers was the first game I remember owning, and that got me into it. So because of that, I played a lot of platformers growing up. I got a Sega Genesis, and I became a huge Sonic kid, because I was just the perfect age for Sonic. Man, this guy's cool.
Yeah.
But I was still playing a lot of Mario, and then I played a lot of beat 'em ups and a lot of fighting games. And then when I got older, around when the original PlayStation came out, was when I started dipping into RPGs because of Final Fantasy on PlayStation. And it always branched. Like I always kind of wanted to play a bit of everything. Like I have my favorites, but it was always like I always wanted to just try stuff. Like I just loved video games. And so even to this day, my palette is pretty broad. It'd be like quicker to tell you what I just don't play than it would be to say what I do play. Like it's like, oh, I've never, and some of it was just lack of exposure, because my biggest gap as a kid was PC gaming. Because I grew up, we didn't have a PC in our house. We didn't have a PC in my house until I was in high school. And then even then, it wasn't like for video games. It was like my mom's PC for work.
Yeah, dial-up system. You wasn't doing no heavy gaming on the.
Yeah, so stuff like Doom and Quake, I largely missed out on. Like my Doom is GoldenEye, which is every console player's Doom of like, oh, this is my first-person shooter awakening is this. Okay, this is cool. So yeah, and then once I started getting into reading Game Informer or other games media, and you get exposed to all these games coming out, or even games that had already been around, and you're reading reviews and previews, and you're like, oh, I didn't know about this, or I would have never thought that I'd be interested in this until I read about it. And that, that just broadened my palette more. I was like, I want to be a bit of everything. In terms of like favorite franchises, I mean, Zelda's up there, Mario, of course. Metal Gear's a big one. Big Metal Gear guy. Mortal Kombat's one of my favorite. Like, I love fighting games, and Mortal Kombat's my favorite. Like,
Which, I mean, that movie is about to come out pretty soon.
Yeah, that first movie is still one of my favorite.
Mine too. Like, people don't bring it up a lot, but that first Mortal Kombat is definitely dated and cheesy now, but I love it. I love it. It's one of my favorites. Every time I can catch it, I put that on for sure.
Because I still argue that it's still arguably the best video game adaptation. And I'm not saying that it's like some Oscar-worthy film. However, I think in terms of taking a fiction, adapting it faithfully, but also being a perfect entry point to non-fans. Because I think a lot of video game films make the mistake of only making it for fans. In fact, Mortal Kombat's sequel, Annihilation, makes that sin, and it's one of the reasons that movie I think is a disaster. But that movie takes like the core idea. If you don't know anything about Mortal Kombat, it lays it out so well. Like, this is how this universe works. Here are these characters. But if you're a fan, there's so much fan service without going too overboard with it. Like, it strikes a balance that I still compare every video game movie that comes out today to that movie of how well it can kind of walk that line. Yeah, I mean, we could do a whole podcast about Annihilation. Annihilation, for all its faults, I still have fun with it. It's one of those movies that's so bad it's good. Like, it's hilarious how bad it is.
Like the ending with the transformations and stuff is really funny.
Like, video game movies for pretty much since we were kids, were always notoriously bad. And it feels like in the last almost 10 years or so, like, we finally turned the corner and I think a lot of it has to do with a lot of directors now are our age that grew up with video games and have a reverence for it. Whereas for so long, it was directors that didn't grow up with the properties, that didn't understand them, but maybe thought they'd be like, oh, this is popular, we can just make a game about it. Who cares how right it is or if it's like for fans? Where now again, so many directors are millennials now that are like, no, I care about this, so we want to get this right.
Yeah. And so, like, with Game Informer, like I said, I had a subscription years and years. I got a whole stack of them still. Like, I've kept a whole bunch of them. What has changed with, like, Game Informer? Because obviously, more people are, tech-based, so, like, them looking at more of the videos, more of the YouTubes and shorts and all of this stuff. Like, how has it, I guess, changed or evolved as, like, it's going a little away from print and more to, like, the visual video sort of thing?
It's interesting because we're still print magazine. We still put out 10 issues a year, which Game Informer has since forever. But sort of at the turn of the times, I think a big driver for when Game Informer got into like starting a YouTube channel, like Game Informer was one of the earliest outlets to really start a YouTube channel. They got in early. Shout out to Ben Hansen, who was formerly Game Informer's kind of like head video guy, now is the owner of MinMax, which is almost a sister outlet because they have several ex-Game Informer staff over there. But the YouTube channel was a big thing in the 2010s to help kind of have, like, again, reach people that, like, okay, even if you're not reading the magazine, we'll make, video reviews. It helped expand our cover story coverage, where it's like, it's not just the printed cover story. Now we can have that plus supplementary features, because when we go to do cover trips, we're traveling to all these studios and getting to talk to all these incredible creators. And we film so much of it because, we record it for transcription and whatnot. But it's like, oh, we're already talking to them. Let's just bring a camera and film it. And we could turn that into a video feature of, like, if they mention something cool, like a cool anecdote or a quote, at the end of the day, some people just prefer to consume media in video form. So let's meet them there too. And, in the last few years now, we have a TikTok now, started getting more into YouTube shorts, the podcasts. Again, going back to the early days, it was audio only. Then it became video around the early to mid 2010s, which it still is today. We stream now. That's probably the another big thing is getting on Twitch and streaming at least a couple times a week and having ongoing series. So it's encompassed like a lot of things, like, but at the same time, what's kind of worked in our favor as print media has been less emphasized, especially in the US. It has made us stand out from other outlets because so many, like, there aren't a lot of print outlets anymore. And a lot of the ones that were around are gone now, and we're like Nintendo Power gone or EGM, but like, it's kind of us and Edge, which is based in the UK, and PC Gamer too. PC Gamer puts out something. But because of that, it's like for people that still enjoy physical media or just just enjoy having a print magazine, whether it's for nostalgia reasons or just personal preference, to be one of the few places that still offer that helps broaden our appeal. And especially now where it's kind of like among like younger demographics, like either Gen Z or Gen A, there's been almost like a push in sort of like going back to analog and physical media now over the last year or two. So it's almost like, oh, are we benefiting from that, of people that maybe didn't grow up in the heyday of game magazines.
Yeah.
And now
'Cause
you're
that's
like,
what I
well,
was thinking. I'm like, cause I remember how like the cover was when Game Informer dropped that new cover, and obviously it was probably gonna be like one of the biggest games of the year, one of the most hyped games of the year and stuff like that. But it was a big moment, a big reveal. People are starting to kind of push back into that, like that sort of let's bring back the OG stuff. Let's bring back the stuff that we used to have back then. How does that sort of mesh with like how tech is sort of going now with like a lot of people, you know, would think, oh, well, you don't necessarily have to be a creative writer. You can AI most of it, or you can do this or do that. What do you see as far as the landscape around like print media in general and how it's going to continue? Do you think this like trend of people coming back into it is going to continue, or do you think there's like sort of a evolution ahead, you know, with all of this extra technology and stuff kind of being a part of it?
yeah. So I mean, speaking for Game Informer, like we're very much anti AI, Frank.
Well, I
Like
mean, you guys
we're
are the OG, so like it's very interesting to like hear about like the people who had to get it in the mud, you know what I mean? Because there really wasn't anything else, you know what I mean? Like it was, you had all of these different print companies and everybody had their own sort of flavor and different things. And then now as time has gone, everybody has kind of went away for the most part. So you're kind of feeling a void that nobody else is really kind of feeling for one. But I mean, at the same time, somebody could, one of these people that's in the industry, they are upset that they can't get one of these jobs at Game Informer, or they don't have the resume to get one of these jobs. You know, all of this technology now, somebody's like, well, what is it going to take for me to get there? Well, maybe I can cut this corner here, do this. And so I just wonder like how creative writing and Game Informer as a whole has been able to stand that test of time. You know what I mean? Because like you don't just get all of these issues and be able to last this long without having a good foundation to stand on.
yeah, it all comes to the quality of the writing. And I think, but it, you know, we still, some of the best stuff you can only get through, you know, it's dystopian to say this, but like human created journalism or human created writing. What's great about Game Informer is that being a magazine, we're not, the content that's in the magazine is not driven by clicks, it's not driven by SEO because it's a print magazine. So
Mm-hmm.
because of that, we can write more thoughtful features about maybe more niche topics or just, you know, like angles that maybe other places aren't covering because maybe it's not the thing that's going to drive a million clicks, but it's something fascinating about a creator or a
Mm-hmm.
trend in the industry or about a series, like examining a popular series in a way that maybe you hadn't before. And, you know, we have writers now, and you know, to go back to your question about how Game Informer's evolved, one thing that we've started in my time was we have contributors now, which is something Game
Mm.
Informer for most of existence didn't have. Like we have, you know, an incredible talent pool of freelancers that contribute to the magazine each month from all over the world, literally from Australia to the UK to, you know, Canada, Europe, all over the
Mm-hmm.
US, that, you know, just broadens the amount of perspectives and skill sets of just like, here's someone that is really knowledgeable about something that maybe not a lot of people are. Like
Mm-hmm.
someone like we had in our most recent issue, we had someone that was like that recently got into Warhammer and wrote like this really deep dive primer to like, hey, if you've ever been interested in Warhammer, here's like a dummy's guide to what Warhammer is, because I was that person not long ago.
Yeah.
Or someone, we had a great writer, Nicole Carpenter, shout out to her, about Love in Deep Space, which is this like really popular game abroad about having these virtual boyfriends. And she wrote a great piece about like, here's why this is popular, here's what this is, and the kind of the phenomenon around it. And it's like when you have so many different like talented voices, all like just confined to a magazine each month, like there's something for everyone, and
Mm-hmm.
it's all coming from such a like human place that it's like AI can't replicate that. It can pretend to, I guess. But you know, it's one of those things where like I like at the end of the day, I think people want to read from real people like them, right? Like, oh, this
Mm-hmm.
is someone else who is as enthusiastic about this medium as I am. I
Yeah.
want to know what they have to say about the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something we strive for each month in the magazine. It's just like, let's, you know, make it as with the most interesting and thoughtful pieces from all these talented writers from all corners of the industry.
And what is up next for you? It kind of seems like, you know, hearing your story, you kind of like was able to fall into something you really wanted to do. You know what I mean? Like you're able to write for a magazine that has real staying power, has a real name in the industry. Do you have other sort of dreams and aspirations as far as like in gaming or I guess outside of gaming as well? Like what's life look like for you like in the nearest future as, this sort of goes on?
Yeah, I think about this a lot because I'm a terrible long-term thinker. I've always been like a midterm thinker at best. I mean, I am very happy. I don't take this job for granted, even more so
Mm.
because, you might be aware we got shut down a year ago
Mhm.
and or almost 2 years ago
Yeah, 2
actually.
years, yeah.
Yeah, and then we were brought back a year ago almost exactly to now. And so, I guess I've earned my video game industry stripes. I'm like, I was part of a mass layoff, so
Yeah.
I know the feeling. So I definitely don't take it for granted. Now, yeah, I think about like what else do I want to do because I get to do the things that I fantasized about for the like 10 years it took me to get here from all
Mhm.
the free blogging and freelancing and internships to this. It's like I've gotten to do and accomplish probably more than I ever thought I would. I've been fortunate enough to get to travel all over the world to visit all these studios and meet all these incredible creators and other people in the industry. There's still like white whales I'm chasing. Like my biggest one is I wanna interview Shigeru Miyamoto. He's
Okay.
on my again, it's like maybe the most boring answer for anyone that does this job, but it's like I have never gotten to interact with him. I've been
Mhm.
lucky enough to speak to and interview some pretty high up people,
Yeah.
but not him.
Yeah.
And so it's like I feel like I need to do that before if I decided to move on. Another one on that list is Ed Boon.
Okay.
Again,
Yeah.
going back to Mortal Kombat, I was like, I've never
Mhm.
gotten to do anything with him. Let's see if we can make something happen there when the right idea comes around. But I don't know, I've always thought about if like trying to do more to like how do we help foster newer talent?
Mhm.
Like our freelance program I mentioned before is really great because I try to tell people about it as much as I can if I meet writers and at events and stuff that aren't working anywhere full time to like, hey,
Mhm.
pitch us, like send us something just to like, our byline means something. If anything that can help further your career and help develop you as a writer is great because it's something that this wasn't a thing when I was chasing the same goals. So it's like I
Mhm.
try to tell other people as much as possible. But
Yeah.
I don't know, like I always think like, do I want to take on more of a mentorship role? Do I see myself that way? I go back and forth about that. Yeah, I have so many things that cross my mind, but it's all such a blur.
Mhm.
And I probably should sit down and think about it more, but our job moves so fast and I'm always so
Yeah.
focused on like, what are we doing this month? What are we doing next month for the next magazine or for the next whatever? But I would like to still be involved in video games in some way just because I love the industry and it's been very good to me by and large. So
Yeah.
and we need more voices in it,
Oh, no
at the end of
doubt.
the day.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's for sure. You were talking about dream interviews. My dream interview, and you brought up Metal Gear is Hideo Kojima. I would love to interview him. That would be dope.
So I got to cross him off my list last year.
Man.
I got to interview him twice. I went to Kojima Productions last year for a Death Stranding 2 preview event,
Mhm.
which was a wild story in itself because they had us play 30 hours of that game over 4 days, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. in Kojima Productions studio in Tokyo with me
Man.
in a room of other journalists from the US and Japan and abroad. And every day he would just kind of, you're playing this game, you're in Kojima Productions. I got to step into the white void
Yeah.
room with the looming
Yeah.
statue and get the picture with Kojima. And you're like, wow, this is crazy. Again, as a Metal Gear
Uh-huh.
fan, you're like, this is nuts. And then
Yeah.
every day you're playing this game and then Kojima just would stroll into the room every now and then, just casually walking by, watching everybody. And because I shared a table with Jeff Keighley, his best friend, he's like hanging around me more than anyone because he wants to see what Jeff's doing.
Yeah.
And then I got to interview him on the red carpet at a Summer Games Fest last year for the Death Stranding 2 like premiere event, what that tour he was doing. So that was fun, like getting like just to ask him some, just questions about not even the game, but just like, hey, let's talk about what do you think about like just art,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, he was definitely like a pinch me, like, oh, I did it. I finally
Yeah.
okay, I got Kojima off the list. That's great.
Yeah, that's what's
So I
up.
hope you
That's
get him.
dope. Yeah,
I hope
that's
you get
that's
him.
that's a that's a dope get right there. Because, like I say, just to talk that man's brain would be cool. If people want to find, the things that you've done, look you up and things like that, go ahead and drop as much information as you want, people to find.
Yeah, social media wise, I'm pretty much only on Blue Sky at
Okay.
Marcus Stewart 7, which is the number 7. And then you can find me on GameInformer.com. Oh, so we have a full website.
GameInformer.com.
We got a bunch of writing, all news stories, right? Features there, magazine features. And then, of course, you can read me right here. See this? Game Informer Magazine, our most recent issue
Boom. Boom.
for
Oh,
Soul
that's
Frame.
clean too. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
Soul
clean.
Frame this month. One of the other great things since we came back is that we've dramatically improved the paper quality of the
I was just getting ready
magazine.
to say, because let me see if I can find one real quick.
Oh, no, what issue we're gonna, looks like we got one of the, which one is that? Oh, which one is that? Is that Castlevania? Yeah, it looks like
Yeah, that is Castlevania,
it's the
Lord of
3DS
Shadow.
one.
Yeah.
Or Lord Shadow, yeah. So that was before my time.
Yeah. I was trying to look for the year. I couldn't find the year on it. But like I got a bunch of these, so that's why I was like, that one's a lot shinier and bigger than what I remember.
Yeah, when we came back last year, one of the big things on our like wish list was we wanted to, because we weren't really happy with the paper quality, and it was something that was always a push and pull with our former parent company. So from when we came back, we were like, we want the magazine to have way better page quality. We want more pages, glossier cover, and that is what it is now. So it's hard, I know it's hard to tell on video, but the other big thing that we started last year, which was another big wish list, is that you can buy Game Informer in bookstores and newsstands now.
Okay, yeah.
It's not just the magazine subscription, but if you want to support Game Informer, the best way is subscribe to the magazine. Get 10 issues a year, both digital version and the print version sent to you. But if you're not able to get a subscription, you can go to Barnes and Noble, you can go to Books A Million, you can go to GameStop, you can go to newsstands and just find the issues now and just buy them individually, which is again, that hasn't been a thing since like the 90s, I think. For GI. So that's great. And also if you're international, you can find us international too in stores. We still can't do subscriptions outside of the US. It's something we're trying to get off the ground, but it's tricky. But in the meantime, in like multiple countries like Canada, the UK, Europe, Australia, Japan, so many countries, you can find Game Informer at whatever your newsstand or bookstores are. So yeah, look for us there and you can read my stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And that's pretty cool. Not a lot of interviews. You get to interview somebody who's really in the thick of, the media from, the print side.
Anyone that's interested in doing this, my first advice is just start writing. Just work on writing. Start now. Don't wait. Write stuff. Read everything. Play everything. Don't be a snob. It's all valid. And just make it happen. It's tricky right now. It's more challenging than it ever has been, but it's not impossible. It's long just get creative and also learn other things besides writing. Because that's something that helped me a lot. Learn how to make videos, do podcasts, stream. Honestly, this job is a lot of that too. It stopped being about just writing a long time ago. If you can make yourself a personality who's multifaceted, you will go much farther. Trust me.
Yeah.